Ladies and gentlemen, this is Envoy of Kairos back for another Speedpaint, and this is another commissioned one. So, I've got a pretty good D&D campaign that I'm in right now, and you guys may recall my Speedpaint of my character, Screb Globo, the Goblin Wizard. Well, here's our next party member who decided to commission me because they wanted their own character done. This is another commission by Ghast and his character is Diggsin, the gnomish former security guard of Royal Guardin, now acting as the party's druid. Yes, that does mean he is a garden gnome. And like any good gnome player for D&D, he gave him a ridiculously long family name. His full name is apparently Diggsin, nicknamed Spadefoot, Jiminy Smit Mudslip Beatgut Nurgle. Where he came up with that, I have no idea, but I love it. Diggsin is an interesting character. He was a royal guard, but he eventually lost his job because his druidic magic was accidentally influencing the garden and caused him to, well, accidentally grow the hedges in his area far too much and cost them hundreds in lawn care. So eventually they decided he was a little too expensive to keep on for how he was doing his job, and they let him go. Gives him a remarkable similarity in his character's backstory to Screb Globo, my goblin, seeing as Screb was fired for having accidentally set his library on fire with a firebolt spell. So, what's Diggsin like? Well, he's a fun character. He's a little simple-minded. He's a little straightforward. He takes everything quite literally. He doesn't quite get idioms and phrases. He has ones from his own hometown that make next to no sense to anybody else, but anyone else brings one up and he just won't get it whatsoever. He's unfamiliar with practically any race besides his own, and interactions with races besides his own normally result in a good degree of confusion. This, of course, means that our very racially diverse party in D&D has resulted in him being genuinely confused at all times and just struggling to keep up. He's a very hospitable and friendly guy. He's actively supporting every member of the party. But at the same time, he never really knows how to approach any of them just yet, which makes social interactions with him both awkward and hilarious. As a functioning druid, though, he is, well, quite talented for somebody who found out he was a druid near accidentally. He's not so much of a healing druid. He doesn't really have any animal focus. He could, but at the moment, he is especially good with just pure plant manipulation. The majority of his spells at the moment actually involve manipulation of vines and roots. And as such, there's some elements of that built into his character design, which will probably be expanded on in a later piece to depict how he looks at higher levels. For the moment, though, his armor is a little ramshackle. His sleeves are a little too long, and that results in them being really rolled up and folded beneath his armor. A few plates of his armor ended up being replaced with pieces of bark tied together by the very vines he manipulates with his magic. His hat is a little large on him, even compared to other gnomes, so it's a little loose at all times, constantly flopping behind him. But despite his outfit being a little slapped together, he's also a very well-kept gnome. Takes meticulous care of his hair and beard. Hospitality is something he is excessively familiar with, being a former royal guard. always addressing others with respect, even if his particular nomenclature and vocabulary are not quite advanced. This has thus far made him the friendliest member of the party, even with his excessive confusion, purely because he does not approach any other party members with any form of disdain or misconception. It's more of he simply is curious and never knows how to approach anything, but he's eager to do so regardless. Compare that to my boy Screb, who is constantly grumpy about just about everything and excessively sarcastic. Pair that up with a barbarian who is obsessed with generally hating magic, suddenly being surrounded by magic users that are actually friendly, and this druid approaching her so calmly just has her genuinely confused. Then we have a centaur who is not quite traditional. Our centaur player ended up deciding to be more deer-based, and has a history in the Feywilds as a child, which she can now barely remember because of her method of exit. The mass confusion across our party with culture clashes and general unfamiliarity with one another's races has resulted in what has to be some of the most ridiculous roleplay I have witnessed in any D&D campaign thus far, and I cannot wait to see where this character development goes. But Diggsin has been handled quite wonderfully so far, and has proven himself to be a very capable and competent druid for the party. He may not understand people, but he knows his plants, and he knows survival. He's especially good at helping us with both of them. If we ever have to deal with any particularly dangerous elements of nature, he's got our backs. He knows them like the back of his hand. Although he may not know us yet, he knows how to keep us safe. And that's certainly the biggest thing you need from a former Guardin gnome. Now, when it comes to creating this piece, one thing that I feel I really excelled in, although the pose was definitely something a little different for me and I was trying to vary it up a little bit, I really went all in with the texture design. I'll admit the bark texture was originally sourced from a photograph and then heavily edited to produce something that suited the rest of the image. The photograph source was a picture I took of a tree in my own backyard, though, so no guilt in that. The textures for the leather and the cloth, though, well, the leather was actually just smudging up the natural grain of the original scan of my sketch. It made it look a little smudged, but generally smooth, which is pretty well suited for the kind of grainy, tanned leather that we're looking at here. Then, the cloth texture, I actually used basically a very high grain layer I created from scratch. Then, motion blurred it into very thin streaking lines. Increased the contrast to make it starkly black and white. Then turned it into a screen layer, turned it 90 degrees, laid it over itself, and then tiled it together until it created a single, very wide, very fine thread pattern that on close-up would look like a relatively common, cheap medieval fabric that would be worn under armor. And then, of course, it took a bit of distortion and warping to get it to suit the curves of the image and the general body it's fitted to. Overall, I feel like the cloth texture is the most impressive here, and I'm very, very proud of it. Overall, I know Ghast is quite happy with the end results for this piece, and I couldn't be happier that he enjoys it. Now, I'm just hoping that a couple of other party members decide to step in and see if they want some of their own characters done up like this. And hey, if you've got a D&D character from your own campaigns that you want some official art of, then feel free to stop in and ask me. I'm always taking commissions. My slots are currently wide open. But I'm also recording this a week before it goes up, so I may have one or two filled in by then, but way business is right now, I doubt it. So hey, feel free to approach me. Ask me in the comments, ask me on my Discord server, on Twitter, whatever. So, for now, this is Envoy of Kairos, signing out. Ghast, glad to work with you on this. And I'll see you all around soon for another video. You can expect another Speedpaint in 2 weeks. And plenty more gameplay in between. Later, guys.